Be me, name is Declan. 36 years old, senior software architect. 12 years in the industry. 8 years at this company. Watched my entire department collapse. Not because of budget cuts. Not because of market conditions. Because someone decided feelings were more valuable than results.
And paid accordingly.
This is the story of how replacing merit pay with emotional labor stipends triggered a complete talent exodus. How rewarding office harmony over technical output drove away everyone who actually built things, leaving behind a supportive, empathetic workspace that couldn't ship a single product. How we learned that you can't pay the bills with good vibes. Let me take you through it. From the announcement to the aftermath. From the first resignation to the last. From a functioning department to an expensive support group that produced nothing. The company was Veridian Systems, a mid-sized software firm specializing in enterprise security solutions. We built the tools that protected corporate networks, detected intrusions, and kept sensitive data safe. Our clients included financial institutions, healthcare systems, and government contractors who couldn't afford security failures. The engineering department was about 60 people, divided into specialized teams. Network security, threat detection, encryption. Each team had its stars and its solid performers. The compensation reflected that reality. Fixed salary plus merit-based bonuses. Based on measurable output and impact. The merit system wasn't complicated. Hit your project milestones, earn a percentage bonus. Solve critical problems, earn more. Bring in patents or significant innovations, earn even more. The top performers could add 40 to 60% to their base salary through merit bonuses. The average performers earned maybe 15 to 20%. Everyone understood the rules. Everyone knew where they stood. Sterling was our top earner. 33 years old, principal security engineer. The guy who had personally developed 3 of our most profitable products. His merit bonuses regularly exceeded his base salary because his contributions exceeded everyone else's by a significant margin. Hollis was similar, though focused on different areas. He specialized in cryptographic systems, the kind of deep mathematical expertise that most people couldn't even understand, let alone replicate. When clients had encryption problems that nobody else could solve, they asked for Hollis. His bonuses reflected his irreplaceable value. I was somewhere in between. Not quite at Sterling or Hollis level, but consistently above average. Merit bonuses around 35% most years. Enough to feel valued for my contributions. Enough to stay motivated. Enough to keep pushing myself. The department ran efficiently under that system. People knew that exceptional work led to exceptional pay. Average work led to average pay. The incentives aligned with the outcomes we needed. Projects shipped on time. Clients stayed happy. Revenue grew steadily. Nobody questioned whether the system was fair because the results spoke for themselves. Then Felicia became our new department manager. She came from a different part of the company, the customer success division, where she had implemented what she called holistic team wellness initiatives. Leadership was impressed by her ability to improve employee satisfaction scores. They thought she could bring that same energy to engineering. Her first month was mostly observation. Sitting in meetings, taking notes. Having one-on-ones with team members. Asking about workplace culture. About how people felt in their roles. About what could make the environment better. The questions seemed harmless enough. At the end of her second month, she scheduled an all-hands meeting for the entire department. The calendar invite said, "Exciting compensation evolution," with a smiley face emoji. Sterling joked that any meeting with emojis in the title was probably bad news. He wasn't wrong. Felicia stood at the front of the conference room, flanked by Cordelia from HR, who was nodding supportively before Felicia even started speaking. The presentation slides were colorful and professional, filled with stock photos of diverse people smiling in office settings. The aesthetic was corporate wellness retreat, not engineering department. She began by acknowledging the department's technical excellence, our track record, our client satisfaction, our contribution to company revenue. Everyone relaxed slightly. Then she pivoted. to what she called invisible contributions, the work that never showed up in metrics, but that made the workplace function. She talked about emotional labor, the effort of maintaining positive relationships, the work of active listening, of conflict resolution, of creating psychological safety for colleagues. She argued that this labor was essential to team success, but completely uncompensated under our current merit system. The people who did this work
were being exploited, she said.
Their contributions subsidizing the technical achievements of others, who benefited from a supportive environment, without ever having to create it. This was an equity issue, and she had a solution. The solution was called the Emotional Labor Stipend Program. It would fundamentally restructure our compensation to recognize what she called the full spectrum of workplace contributions. Technical merit bonuses would be reduced by 60%. The savings would fund a new stipend pool distributed based on peer feedback about emotional and interpersonal contributions. The room went silent. Not confused silence. Horrified silence. Sterling actually laughed, then realized she was serious. His expression shifted to something else entirely. Felicia continued as if she hadn't noticed the reaction. She explained the evaluation system. Every month, employees would submit feedback about colleagues' emotional contributions, who had been supportive during difficult projects, who had helped resolve conflicts, who had made people feel heard and valued. These nominations would be scored and converted into stipend payments. The math was brutal when you worked it out. If you were a top technical performer earning 60% in merit bonuses, that would drop to 24%. But if you were highly rated for emotional labor, you could earn an additional 40% from the stipend pool. The system explicitly shifted compensation from technical output to interpersonal perception. Sterling raised his hand, asked a simple question. If he delivered a critical project alone, but wasn't perceived as emotionally supportive, would he earn less than someone who delivered nothing, but was very nice to work with? Felicia said that was a false framing. That all contributions mattered equally. The meeting devolved from there. Technical leads asked how this would affect project timelines. Project managers asked how they would explain the new system to clients who expected technical excellence. Hollis asked, with barely concealed contempt, how being nice would help him solve cryptographic vulnerabilities. Felicia said he was demonstrating exactly the attitude that made emotional labor necessary. Cordelia from HR stepped in, reminded everyone that the decision was final, that leadership had approved the new structure, that implementation would begin next quarter. Questions about philosophy were welcome. Questions about whether it would happen were not. The meeting ended with no applause. Just people filing out in stunned silence. I caught up with Sterling in the parking lot afterward. He was already on his phone, scrolling through job listings. He looked up and said something that stuck with me. They want to pay me less for what I do and more for how I make people feel. I make machines secure. My feelings aren't part of the product. The first quarter under the new system was educational in the worst way. The merit bonus cuts hit immediately. Sterling's compensation dropped by about $40,000 annually. Hollis took a similar hit. I lost around $18,000 myself. Not devastating, but definitely noticed. The emotional labor evaluations began that same month. Every employee had to nominate colleagues who had contributed to their emotional well-being. The nominations were anonymous, which immediately created problems. People started campaigning for positive feedback rather than focusing on their actual work. Lunch conversations shifted from technical problems to interpersonal politics. Waverly emerged as the new system's biggest beneficiary. She was a junior developer, 26 years old, 2 years out of college. Her technical output was consistently average to below average. Her code worked but wasn't elegant. She missed deadlines occasionally. Under the old system, her merit bonuses were minimal. But Waverly was genuinely likable. Always ready to chat. Always asking how people were doing. Always bringing snacks to share. Always volunteering to plan social events. Under the new system, her emotional labor scores were exceptional, among the highest in the department. After the first evaluation cycle, Waverly's total compensation exceeded Sterling's. Let that sink in. A junior developer with average technical skills was now earning more than the principal engineer who had personally generated millions in revenue through his innovations. The system was working exactly as designed. That was the problem. Sterling handed in his resignation 3 weeks later. His exit interview was brief according to those who heard about it. He said he wasn't being paid to do his job, he was being paid to make people feel good, and that wasn't his skill set. He had accepted an offer from a competitor at a 20% raise, with traditional merit-based compensation. They were thrilled to have him. His departure created immediate problems. 3 critical projects had Sterling as the technical lead. Nobody else fully understood his work. The documentation existed, but wasn't complete. Sterling had planned to document everything. Eventually, when the projects were done, now he was gone, and so was that knowledge. Felicia held a department meeting after Sterling left. She framed his departure as natural turnover, said that not everyone would fit the new culture, and that was okay. She talked about building a team aligned with our values rather than just our technical requirements. She seemed genuinely pleased that someone who wasn't emotionally engaged had self-selected out. Hollis resigned 2 weeks after Sterling gave even less notice. His exit interview was reportedly even shorter. Something about not being paid to hold hands. When there were encryption vulnerabilities to fix, he went to the same competitor. They were apparently hiring everyone we lost. The exodus accelerated after that. Senior engineers started updating their LinkedIn profiles, changing their status to open to work. Recruiters noticed immediately. Our top performers were suddenly in high demand at companies that still paid for technical excellence. Within 2 months of the emotional labor stipend launch, we had lost 11 senior engineers. That was 18% of the department, but they represented about 40% of our actual productive output. The people who shipped products, who solved hard problems, who kept clients happy, were walking out the door, while the people who planned birthday parties were getting raises. The productivity impact was immediate and severe. Project timelines started slipping, not by days, by weeks. Code reviews that used to take hours took days because the people who could review complex code efficiently were gone. Problems that senior engineers would have solved quickly now escalated because nobody remaining had the expertise. Brennan was one of the engineers who stayed. 29 years old, solid performer. Not senior enough to command top offers elsewhere, but experienced enough to pick up slack. He came to me after the 2nd month, looking exhausted and frustrated. Asked how long this could possibly continue. His workload had roughly doubled since the exodus began. He was covering for departed colleagues while also handling his own responsibilities. His stress levels were through the roof. But under the new evaluation system, his compensation hadn't increased at all because technical output wasn't weighted heavily anymore. Meanwhile, his emotional labor scores were actually declining because he was too busy working to chat with colleagues, to attend optional social events, to demonstrate the interpersonal warmth that the stipend system rewarded. He was being penalized for productivity. The irony was painful to watch. The remaining high performers were too stressed to be emotionally supportive because they were carrying the actual workload. Their stipend scores dropped as their work hours increased. The low performers who had time for emotional labor looked better and better on the evaluations, even as the department's output collapsed. Felicia remained convinced the system was working. She pointed to the monthly surveys. Employee satisfaction scores were actually up for the employees who remained. They reported feeling more heard, more valued, more supported. Record high scores on psychological safety. The surveys didn't capture what was actually happening. The people who felt valued were mostly the ones who benefited from the new system. The people who felt devalued had already left. The surveys measured the opinions of those who remained, which was increasingly a self-selected group who appreciated emotional recognition over technical compensation. Bancroft, our CTO, started paying attention after the 3rd month of missed deadlines. He had been hands-off during the transition, trusting Felicia to manage the department. Now clients were complaining. Deliverables were late. Quality was declining. The revenue implications were becoming impossible to ignore. He requested a meeting with Felicia and me, as one of the senior architects who had stayed.
He wanted to understand the disconnect
Between the positive culture metrics and the negative performance metrics. He genuinely seemed confused. How could satisfaction be up and output be down? I walked him through the situation as diplomatically as possible. Explained that our highest performers had left because the new compensation structure devalued their contributions. Explained that the remaining team was overworked and understaffed. Explained that emotional labor stipends had created an incentive structure where being nice paid better than being productive. Felicia pushed back immediately. Said I was mischaracterizing the program. That technical output was still valued, just not valued more than emotional contributions. She argued that a healthy workplace culture would eventually produce better results, that we needed patience, that the old extractive model was unsustainable. Bancroft asked for specific numbers. How many senior engineers had we lost? 11. How many critical projects were behind schedule? 7 of 9. How much had our delivery capacity decreased? Roughly 40%. What was the projected revenue impact? The finance team was still calculating, but early estimates suggested we might miss our annual targets by 15 to 20%. The room went quiet after those numbers. Felicia didn't have a response. Cordelia from HR wasn't there to support her. Bancroft looked at the data for a long moment, then asked a question that changed everything. He asked if the employees who left had been offered retention packages. Felicia said no. That wasn't appropriate. Bancroft's expression shifted. He asked why it wasn't appropriate to retain top performers. Felicia explained that offering special compensation to high technical performers would undermine the equity principles of the stipend program. It would send a message that technical output mattered more than emotional contributions, which was exactly the hierarchy they were trying to dismantle. Bancroft said something I'll never forget. He said that technical output did matter more, at least for a technology company, that we weren't a therapy practice. We were an engineering firm, and engineering firms needed engineers, not emotional support specialists. Felicia looked like she had been slapped. The conversation deteriorated from there. Felicia accused Bancroft of not understanding modern workplace dynamics. Bancroft accused Felicia of not understanding basic business economics. I sat in the middle, uncomfortable but not surprised. This collision had been inevitable from the day the stipend program launched. The board got involved after that meeting. Revenue projections were officially revised downward. Client complaints were accumulating. The competitor who had hired Sterling and Hollis was actively pitching our existing clients, suggesting they could provide better service with our former employees. The competitive damage was compounding. An emergency review was scheduled. The entire compensation restructure would be evaluated by outside consultants. Felicia was asked to prepare a defense of the emotional labor stipend program, demonstrating its value to the company beyond employee satisfaction surveys. I wasn't in that presentation, but I heard about it afterward. Felicia presented data showing improved psychological safety scores, reduced interpersonal conflict, and higher self-reported well-being among remaining employees. The consultants asked about productivity metrics, delivery timelines, and revenue impact. Felicia struggled to connect her emotional metrics to any business outcomes. The consultant's recommendation was direct. The stipend program should be suspended immediately. Traditional merit-based compensation should be restored, with possible additions for teamwork and collaboration, but not as a replacement for technical achievement. As a supplement to it, performance and culture could coexist. But culture couldn't replace performance. Felicia refused to implement the recommendation, called it a betrayal of everything she had built, said she would resign before dismantling the program. The board accepted her resignation. Faster than anyone expected. She was gone within a week. Cordelia from HR was transferred shortly after. The new manager was promoted internally. Someone who had lived through the disaster, who understood what had gone wrong. The merit system was restored, modified slightly. to include some recognition for collaboration, but anchored firmly in measurable contribution. The emotional labor stipends disappeared, but the damage was already done. The engineers who had left weren't coming back. Sterling was now leading a team at our competitor, building products that competed directly with ours. Hollis had taken his cryptographic expertise somewhere that valued it appropriately. The institutional knowledge they represented was gone permanently. We spent the next year trying to rebuild, hiring new senior engineers, training them on our systems, recovering from missed deadlines, repairing client relationships. The company survived, but diminished. We lost about 25% market share. That never fully recovered. The financial analysis afterward was sobering. The emotional labor stipend program, designed to create a more equitable workplace, had cost the company approximately $12 million in lost revenue, replacement hiring costs, and missed opportunities. The employee satisfaction scores that Felicia had celebrated meant nothing when there was no business left to be satisfied about. Waverly stayed through all of it. She adapted to the restored merit system, actually improved her technical skills, became a solid contributor eventually. She told me once privately that she had known the stipend system was unsustainable, but couldn't turn down free money. Who could blame her? The lesson from all of this should be obvious. Merit and empathy aren't mutually exclusive, but they're not interchangeable either. A workplace can value emotional intelligence while still rewarding technical excellence. A compensation system can recognize soft skills without abandoning hard metrics. The key is balance, not replacement. Felicia's mistake wasn't caring about emotional labor. It was deciding that emotional labor was everything. That technical output was just another input, no more valuable than being pleasant, in a technology company, where technology was literally the product. That belief was disconnected from reality. And reality eventually collected the bill. The department recovered, mostly. We're smaller now, more cautious. Leadership is more skeptical of cultural initiatives that don't connect to business outcomes. Maybe that's overcorrection. Maybe that's just survival instinct. Either way, we learned the lesson. I stayed through all of it, partly because I believed in the company, partly because I was too senior to start over, partly because someone needed to keep the lights on while everything burned. Now I tell this story to new employees when they ask about the strange gap in our company history. We don't talk about the stipend year much. It's embarrassing. A case study in good intentions, producing terrible outcomes, in making feelings matter so much that we forgot the work mattered too, and paid the price, in talent, in revenue, in reputation. Anyway, that's my story, about replacing merit pay with emotional labor stipends, about watching top talent walk away because they were paid to feel instead of paid to perform, about a supportive, empathetic workspace that couldn't produce anything at all. Perfect culture scores. 0 products shipped. Turns out you can't code with feelings, no matter how validated they are.